Hello again, everyone. Today, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different, which is instead of playing the game or reviewing vehicles, etc., I am going to be just ranting, essentially, about the Namer 30 and how incredibly botched Gaijin has made it. How just terribly they have implemented it. I will be talking about why this is. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the name. So this thing, the Namer 30, the 30 refers to the gun caliber, being the 30mm Bushmaster. This is the same gun that the in-service Namer IFV has in real life, which has a turret and trophy APS. This is just an experimental test bed for the RCWS turret made by Elbit, I believe. So just calling it the Namer 30 makes no sense, because both the Namers should be Namer 30. It's supposed to be called the Namer RCWS 30 because it has the RCWS turret on it. But, oh well, bitch, you know, Gaijin oversighting Israeli vehicle names, what else is new? Plenty of that happening. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the side skirts. What's going on here? Why does it have side skirts? And I'm sure you've probably seen images of the Namer, and it's got side skirts. Alright, but here's the thing. This here is the Namer that we all know, as you can see in this image. Let me see if I can get a better photo of it. Here, this is the Namer as we know. This is the APC variant. As you can see, it does indeed have side skirts. However, there's something a bit wrong with this, because the actual version, which was an experiment, does not, in fact, have... Let me have a look at what's on the forum page. Does not have side skirts. It does not have side skirts. The one in game does have side skirts. The one here does not have side skirts. Care to explain that, Gaijin? Why does it have side skirts? It's just not accurate. I'm not complaining because they're well-armored side skirts, but what? How did this is some strange oversight? Because as far as I know, there isn't a single image of the Namer RCWS 30 that has side skirts. Every single image does not have side skirts. This is an Axarit, that's not the Namer. They've all got no side skirts. Except, as you can see here, this is the Namer IFV. This is the in production, well, will be in production variant that's in service. It has side skirts. But this is not the version that we have in game. So why does this have side skirts? What? Here, what? Gaijin with their amazing research team, as usual. I swear, this is not a Armament campaign. I'm just rather pissed off at the fact that so little care has gone into this vehicle, which was awaited for so long because the tree did not have a single IFV. Anyway, moving on to the next issue with the Namer, the armor. Now this is the biggest issue, by far. By far. As you can see here, the composite armor on the Namer is 70mm composite screen, rolled homogeneous 50mm, external composite armor with nearer elements 50mm. It is the exact same armor as the Merkava Mark IV allies, well, any Merkava Mark IV has. It's the exact same front plate armor. The problem with that, alright, becomes the weight of the vehicle is 61 tons. The weight of the Merkava Mark IV is 65 tons. And the thing about this vehicle, the Namer, is that it has the entire turret of the Merkava Mark IV chopped off. It's got no big turret with immense, gigantic composites on it. It's missing all this. You know what else it's missing? The side composites. The Namer does not have side composites, which as you can see are rather thick, just like these absolutely gigantic turret composites. It's also missing, for example, these fireproof containers and all other heavy items inside the vehicle. Instead, the Namer has exactly 0 side composites, as you can see in the X-ray, has no big boxes here that would weigh decently, and has absolutely 0 turret. So this is trying to say that the Merkava Mark IV's turret weighs only roughly 4 tons, according to Gaijin. Be a bit more since they probably think this would weigh maybe a few tons. So it's Basically, at very most, Gaijin thinks the Merkava Mark IV's turret weighs, what, 7 tons? That makes 0 sense. And yes, in-game, the armor is incredibly low. It's incorrect. The weight may even be incorrect. But what... How do they stuff that up? Because the fact that not only is it missing the whole turret, it's missing all the side composites. When you go into armor analysis, you can see that it has these 50mm nearer blocks. Once again, Merkava and Namer should have Slira armor. There have been many incredibly well-written bug reports with patterns for Slira in them that have been ignored by Gaijin for years. Slira, in real life, has better KE protection than Nira. But they don't get in-game. The Namer and the Merkava Mark IV just get Nira armor. The Namer also only has essentially 10mm thick armor on the sides here. And that's it, it's just 10mm thick. 0 proper composites like what the front plate has. But the Merkava Mark IVs do. As you can see, they have these big composite blocks on the side, which would weigh a hefty amount, as I'm sure you can imagine. So where are they on the Namer? And here's the interesting thing about the Namer. In real life, because there was the entire turret of the Merkava Mark IV cut off, the designers of the Namer crammed that amount of weight worth of armor from the turret back into the hull to protect it. So how, Gaijin, how has the front plate thickness and protection stayed identical and the rest of the hull armor disappeared? This should not even require top secret information and essentially diagrams of the real thing. This should only take basic common sense to figure out there is something majorly fucked up here. How is it possible? Are these crew members so severely obese that that's where the weight comes from? Do these little electronic equipment systems weigh multiple tons, Gaijin? What? It doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense at all. Especially when you compare it to the Merkava Mark IV's armor, which is already botched and underperforming majorly. Because in-game, you can see that a Cornet ATGM, the 9M133, also known as the Cornet, can just punch straight through the side of the turret and kill whoever's on the other side of it. It can just punch you basically anywhere. I can just fire randomly and it's gonna punch through literally anywhere. Like, look at this. Alright, but then when I compare it to a real-life Merkava Mark IV that was hit by a Cornet, and here you can see an image of a Merkava Mark IV that was hit by a Cornet ATGM. Do you notice a difference? If the Merkava in War Thunder was accurate, this man should be fucking dead. But he is not, because unlike what Gaijin believes, the Merkava Mark IV's armor is not made out of wet paper. This may come as a surprise to some, but it is not made of wet paper. So, what is amiss here? Well, it's the fact that the Merkava Mark IV is completely missing Slira armor on the turret, which I have mentioned previously. Allow me to show you. This here is a bug report made about the Merkava Mark IV's missing Slira armor 2 years ago. And as you can see, this essentially, you can pause the video and read it, but it refers to the fact that it uses only Nira in-game, when in real life, it's supposed to be Slira. As you can see in this patent here that discusses what Slira armor is, as well as many other things. This link, if I remember correctly, I should attach it in the description so that you can read through all this yourself, or you could just pause it as I scroll along. The fact that Gaijin has ignored this for 2 years, and then gone and added the Namer with the exact same problem as what the Merkava Mark IV has, is simply hilarious. Hilarious and disheartening, to be frank. Because this lack of armor means that literally anything can punch through this vehicle. Anything at its BR. Like if I get a Panzer Battalion 123, no, just a Leopard 24 in general, There is no angle where this armor becomes effective. It's going to just go straight through. In fact, it's going to overpen in some cases and go straight through the vehicle. I believe if I run through here, it almost passes through the tank. I've got it to pass through once. But there is nowhere in the tank that is safe from even lower ranked APF SDS. At all. It just doesn't... There's nothing. There's nothing at all. I don't understand how Gaijin can mess that up the way they did. And especially since there's 0 side armor. And no, I don't believe the Merkava Mark IV or Namer should be able to stop APF SDS to the side. But the Namer having precisely 0 side composites and only 50mm low composite blocks is ridiculous. And the fact that the Merkava Mark IV itself's armor is greatly underperforming in terms of what it can protect against is absolutely ridiculous again. And so what needs to be changed? Well, it needs to be given the Slira armor. There have also been reports where the Merkava Mark IV is actually 80 tons, which would cause drastic reduction to its mobility, which you can see in videos of the Merkava Mark IV. However, this drastic reduction in mobility would come with so much armor that this would essentially be the heavy tank of MBTs. And now something I also commonly see discussed is that, oh, the Merkava was built only to defend against shitty RPGs and people with past generations of heat weaponry that could not damage any modern tank. Therefore, the Merkava Mark IV's armor was never designed to be anti-tank. Yes, Israel, the country being constantly attacked and having to fight wars with many hostile surrounding countries who are armed with tanks and APF SDS at a similar equivalent to what Israel would use. Israel decided not to make their tanks proof of APF SDS even remotely. Does that make logical sense? And people talk, oh, well, it's because the armored doctrine of Israel is that it needs to defend in urban quarters against RPGs and stuff. Except the first variant of the Merkava Mark IV, the Merkava Mark IV-A, came out before even the first Gaza war. Before this sort of urban conflict. The Merkava Mark I, for example, first served in the first Lebanon war, which you could say was an urban conflict against RPGs and stuff. However, that was at a time period when the Merkava didn't even have composites, when most tanks didn't even have composites except like the Russian vehicles like the T-64. That's when that was. Since then, Israel would have had plenty of time to develop, well, even just the Slira armor that I was showing you in the bug report before talks about how it's quite APF SDS resistant. I have also seen data, which I unfortunately cannot find, again, to post in the description, that says multiple Russian fairly top APF SDS shells should not be able to penetrate either Mark IV or the Namer, and especially not the Namer, seeing as it has the entire turret of the Merkava Mark IV shoved back into the hull, which would give it significantly more armor, as I've discussed. The fact that that's missing means that, as I said, 3BM60, for example, is known to be stopped by the Namer, but in-game it punches straight through. So that is the thing. The Merkavas and the Namer should be significantly more heavily armored, especially the Namer. This video is more so about the Namer than the Merkava, because I believe there must be other videos talking about the Merkava. But I have covered the Merkava Mark IV slightly, and that the Slira armor is simply unrealistically unarmored, and should be significantly more so armored and protected, as can be seen. There is a reason why the Merkava Mark IV is referred to as the world's most well-protected MBT, and it isn't because of the front engine, which in-game creates more spole from APF SDS than if it wasn't there, which is, again, ridiculous. The biggest complaint I have, though, is not the... because I can't completely blame Gaijin for not making the armor better, since there aren't concrete sources of exact data on it, other than, you know, top secret information that would land you with a gun round in the head from the Mossad if you were to leak it. That just isn't publicly available. But you shouldn't need publicly available information to figure out that maybe this IFV should not weigh only 4 tons less than the Merkava Mark IV, despite having substantially less hull composites and an entire missing turret worth of composites. I hope everyone watching this has enough critical thinking skills and common sense to understand what I'm talking about here, because it makes zero sense. Anyway, moving on. The final thing about the Namer 30 that I would like to talk about is the spike missiles, which it is armed with. Problem with these is, it has 2 spare spike missiles, which is great. It's more than it had on the dev server, which was precisely just the 2 in here. However, only having 4 spike missiles, like the KF-41 did on release, is kinda weird, especially since the entire tank is just empty space here. You could easily have fit more in, and especially since the main cannon only has 200 rounds available, which is very low compared to many IFVs. It's already lacking in ammo, it's lacking in penetration, and it's lacking in spike missile count. So just the armament in general is just poor. The armor is botched to high hell, and it's slow. What was Gaijin thinking? I'll tell you, they weren't. They weren't thinking. It's that simple. They could not care less about the tree because not many people play the tree compared to other nations, so they could not care less about it. I had hoped that when they added the Ram Sigol premium, they would have fixed the armor because, you know, they kinda need to. It's a premium. They're gonna sell them. They would want people to buy it if it's a good vehicle. But no, even then, they did not bother fixing the armor. So I have lost hope at this point. The fact that even the most incredibly written dev bug reports are ignored years later shows that they will not be changing anything anytime soon. So we're just left here to sit, suffer, and wait in pain and agony. Final thing I would like to talk about is the fact that a lot of people say that, oh, well, because MBT composites are nerfed in-game intentionally by Gaijin to make it not entirely historically accurate and a bit more fair in the gameplay sense. That's why, for example, the Merkava has poor armor. Except, what they forget when they say that is that the shells, top tier APF SDS, is also nerfed intentionally, sometimes by hundreds of millimeters. So these things should scale in the first place. And again, the fact that even the Cornet ATGM, which is technically a heat projectile, which people claim are the Merkava's only supposed to be resistant against heat, yada yada, like I've talked about earlier. So why can't it even stop the Cornet then? Which should also be slightly nerfed in-game if Gaijin is true about what they say. So that just doesn't make any sense to anyone with basic common sense, I should hope. Anyway, if you would like to see the Merkava Mark IVs and the Namer get buffed, please like the video. I will be putting the link to the bug report that I showed in the description. I will also be putting a link to my Discord server and also the Israeli Military Tech Research server in the description, because if you want to know more about the armor, more than I could ever describe, and more about documents and details on Slira armor and the armor that these vehicles should have, you can find it from the people there significantly better than I could tell you. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and I'm going to go vent more in various spam channels. Goodbye.